many a career dream have been crushed by a creative director. It's interesting.
Right?
Well, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, you posted that up on Facebook. You asked the question, what would you rather work for? This asshole, or
the talented asshole, or the sweetheart hack.
Which was wonderful to see. Like within an hour, 80 posts from, I mean, a who's whoery of the business, and then truly, like it was fascinating to see everyone's responses. And again, I mean, the same thing happened to me, having an art director who looked at my book and said, you're a great designer. I can see you love type, but I don't know. I don't think this advertising gig is for you. And I'm like going, oh man. So and you sort of like go, what do I, how do I, what do I do with this?
Right.
So, as a student, like, what would you give them as a thought, like something to motivate them, or like, I know they're going out showing their books. In a matter of a few weeks, they're going to be out at portfolio review nights, and they are going to get that. I always say opinions are like belly buttons. Everyone's got one. Most of them stink, except yours, that sort of thing. So what can a young Adlander sort of like take from that kind of a comment? Like, I don't really think you have what it takes. Like,
I think if you know ahead of time that there are going to be a certain percentage of people who are not going to like your work, no matter how good it is. In fact, I would go so far as to say the more interesting and provocative your work, the more people that will not like it. The important thing is to be able to find a place where the style of work that you do is celebrated, that you feel like you have a connection with, because that's really where you're going to flourish.
So, and again, like one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the hot shops. Everybody wants to work for one of the, rock star creative directors, the Ted Royers, the Alex Boguskis, the Rob Rileys, etc. And working at one of those hot shops. What's your feeling on, like, for a student getting right out of the chute, as far as picking the place to work, determining where they want to work, that idea?
It's important to surround yourself with people who are teaching you a style of working and a taste level and a way of thinking that is going to push you and raise you. Because if you're working with hacks, it's really hard to rise above the fray when you're still learning in the first years of your career. But that said, there is an advantage to getting a really solid understanding of all of the aspects of how do you work in an agency, how do you present, how do you develop ideas from the very beginning, not just that little fraction of time when you're actually doing creative development, but all the way through strategy, execution, production, reworking things. Because once you get in front of a creative director, if they're not totally wowed, you don't get another chance. Yeah. So a lot of times people say, well, I'm thinking about finishing school early. Why would I continue to pay to learn when I can be paid to learn? Well, okay, that's true. But if you think of on the bell curve, there are a lot of people who are an A-, and there are a lot of people who are an A. If you want to get a killer job, you have to be an A+. Yeah. If you get out of school too early when you're an A-, it's not to say that you can't become an A+, but you're shortchanging your career. That springboard is going to be handicapped in a way, because it's possible that you won't be able to reach your potential, so that when you do unleash your book onto the world, that you're not demonstrating what you're really capable of, so you get shut down, and then you have to go down to the next tier of agencies.
I send my young Adlanders out on informational interviews before I even let them unleash their books. Try and find anybody out there. Thank you. What kind of questions, what should they be looking for when they get out there for those? Like, you're now in front of who you think is somebody I want to work for, but it's not to show your book, it's to find out. What should they be asking? What are the questions that you would recommend, or what would you think they should start with?
I think they should try to think ahead of time. What are they genuinely curious to know? Because you may never have the opportunity, when you're going out on informational interviews, you may never have the opportunity to sit down and ask questions so directly of people who are doing really, really cool stuff in the world. And a lot of times what happens is people sit down and maybe they're intimidated, or maybe they didn't think about it ahead of time, but they obviously haven't done any research on the company, haven't really thought about the person that they're asking the questions of. So they end up asking questions like, why did you pick the type for that ad? Or just really superficial stuff like, what do you do on the weekends? It's just, the quality of questions is going to have a lot to do also with that person's perception of you. And if you ask really good questions, it creates a dialogue that you can sustain over time and revisit. And a really good thing to do is when you do have a conversation, if you start getting into a thread and you find out that somebody's interested in something, for God's sakes, follow up and stay tapped into that. I remember you were saying you were really into windsurfing. Here's a great article I found. Or I saw this interview on TV, here's the link to it. Anything like that, so that you're building a web of commonality beyond just your portfolio.
Right, so it's engaging with the person. the
right.
core person.
Don't just build the relationship when you want something
Right.
from the person, when you're looking for a job.
Which
I mean, yeah, it's like networking 101.
But that's the hardest thing to ever teach somebody, because everybody goes, I want a job, I need a job, yet what are you going to do for them? And that's one of the things I try and say, even on their resumes, that objective, that career objective. Kind of old school, but the idea is, don't make it about you. What are you bringing to the table? What kind of skills? So again, that's sort of like what I always want to engage, or at least let my students engage with whoever they're visiting. What can I bring to the table?